Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a really exciting show for you today. Um, Today, we're going to talk about how we recycle water. Pretty much, where does it go when you go? And after that, at 10:30, we will be tuning in for a Prop 218 information meeting regarding rate changes. So before I get into the most exciting part, which is Maria, of course. A few things. We encourage questions. Ask as many questions as you want. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. It's located at the bottom of your screen. And of course, if you want to say your question in person or say it live, you can use the raise hand feature. It's located at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're using a mobile phone or tablet, it'll be located at the top right. So once you use the raise hand feature, we will call on you, unmute you, and then you can ask your question. So for questions, please use Q&A or the raise hand feature. And with that, I wish I had a little drum roll for you, like, but with that, I will leave it to Maria Rosales, who's going to take us through how do we recycle water, featuring the San Jose Creek Water Reclamation Plant. And take it away, Maria.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today, this lovely Saturday morning. My name is Maria Rosales Ramirez, and I work for the Public Information Office in the Sanitation Districts. So I guess to start, why don't you guys put in the chat if you have ever heard of the Sanitation Districts and what we do, or if this is your first time joining us in the San Jose Creek Water Reclamation Plant Tour. I always love to hear what you guys have to say. So let's hear it. Go ahead and start putting that in the chat. So let's get started. Come on.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess to start, let me see, why is it not?
We got Bonnie Brown, who said it's her first time.
Awesome.
Anna Wilk, who also said it's her first time.
Great. So you guys won't know if I'm right or wrong, but go ahead and ask as many questions as you can.
Perfect. Someone said they've heard of us before, and then Joseph Velasco is joining us from the Orchard-Dale Water District.
Oh, hi, your friends from Orchard-Dale Water District. How are you? Well, I guess to start before on how we recycled water, we have to understand a little bit of the history of how our waste has been managed historically. And it wasn't always a great picture, as we can see here. In the past, it was very common to discharge our sewage, our wastewater, into the ocean. And as you know, as bad as it sounds, that was the practice. Obviously, as we became more conscious of the impacts that this had on our public health and the environment, there was a lot of need to change. So there was a lot of pressure on our local government to do something about this. So the sanitation districts were formed in 1923 to regionally manage and collect wastewater. So wastewater is a technical term that we use, but I'm sure you guys guess where we're going with this. So go ahead and put in the chat, what do you guys think wastewater is? What does it have? And how do you guys think we treat it? And we'll see, we're going the right way with this. But I wanted to go back on the word that was very important. The word that I used was regionally. So meaning that any city or municipality or jurisdiction within LA County could do this on their own, treat their own city, the waste for their own city. But we got so much benefit from managing this regionally together, pulling our resources together. And that's kind of the role that the sanitation districts did. So that's why our name is Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. So these are our humble beginnings. From now, we've kind of grown, kind of cover half of LA County, as we can see here on our map. We serve over 5.6 million people. Spread throughout LA County. We can see we go as far north as the Antelope Valley, all the way east. If you got all the way west over here, you see this little patch right here. That's Malibu, with Santa Clarita, all the way down to the PV Peninsula, and all the way west to like the county line. So we cover a lot of area. You might wonder why City of LA is kind of left out. They were one of the cities that had their own system first. So we kind of cover everything outside of City of LA. We manage, or we do this for 78 cities and unincorporated counties or unincorporated territories within LA County. So this is a lot. How do we manage the waste for such a large area? Well, we do have infrastructure in place throughout, our service area. We see right here in yellow where our facilities are. We have, facilities up in the Antelope Valley, in Santa Clarita. We see them peppered all around. And connecting these facilities are a system of what we call sewers. The sewers connect these facilities and kind of keep LA County connect, or our service area connected hydraulically. So that's very important. That's going to come into play later. So I want you guys to keep in mind. Overall, we have 11 wastewater reclamation / wastewater treatment plants, but beyond that, we also have our sewers, our pumping plants, our outfall. So this is quite a big operation that we manage. And we have a closer look at our facilities. Combined, we manage about 400 million gallons of wastewater a day. That's a lot. Just to put things into perspective, so maybe put in the chat, Genesis, let me know if somebody mentions this. How much do you think the average person uses a day? So in terms of gallons, let's see who's a brave soul who can take a stab at it.
Okay, Joanna says 100.
Lower.
Steven says 55.
That's around right, yeah.
And that's all we got.
That's
13 gallons from Bobby Brown.
I think Steven, you're the closest one to. We got on average, person uses around 60 gallons. That's every time you wash your hands, flush the toilet, do the dishes, maybe, I don't know what else we can do out there, wash your pet, or, all that stuff. That's around 4 bathtubs full of water. So as you can imagine, 4 bathtubs full of water is only 70. Can you guys imagine 400 million gallons? It's a lot of water. We do a big job, and we're proud to do it. So the starting point for all of this is the sewers. I feel the sewers don't get a lot of love. If you've seen me give the story before, you might remember this from me, but the sewers are important because they carry the waste away from our homes and somewhere else. And maybe as homeowners or residents, we don't really think of where that somewhere else is. So today we're going to learn where that somewhere else is. But we got to appreciate the sewers for what they do. Our sewers take the wastewater from homes or from businesses. And from there, we have what we call laterals that connect into larger sewers that we see right here. And then from then they go into even bigger sewers, which are what we call trunk sewers. And those are the sewers that the sanitation district owns and is responsible for. These smaller sewers tend to be kind of like the city's property. And then anything within the home, the property itself obviously belongs to the homeowner. So together we're all combined. We all kind of have different responsibilities within to make sure that as the sewers kind of work properly. So if you're ever, I'm not saying you're going to be in the middle of a street, but if you ever see a manhole in a street and it has the letters CSD, that stands for County Sanitation District. So that means it's one of our sewers. You're in one of our service areas. So keep an eye out for that. Here's a look at what our trunk sewers look like. These are huge. I mean, these gentlemen here are probably around 6 feet. So these are large sewers, and we carry a lot of volume of water. So we have a dedicated department to manage, that is specifically responsible for the sewers, the inspections, the maintenance, the cleaning, and the repair of the sewers, because obviously it's a big job. 1,400 miles of trunk sewer, that's like from here to the Midwest. A lot of sewers, and it's a big responsibility, which we've been, obviously very happy to do. So the sewers bring the waste from our homes to places like this, a wastewater reclamation plant. Today we're gonna learn about San Jose Creek Water Reclamation Plant, which is a little bit different than water treatment plant. Anybody wants to guess what the difference between reclamation and treatment is? I'm gonna call on Steve. Maybe Steve wants to take a stab at it. Let's see who does this on the chat. Brave souls? No?
Okay, we're waiting. They're typing away.
Oh, they are? Okay.
I hope. Okay, so Steven took you up on your he said you can use it for drinking water versus just car washes.
It's almost there. I think we need to refine that answer a little bit more, but what I want to convey today is water, the level that you treat the water depends on what you're going to do with that water. So if you're going to drink the water, it's going to go to a different level of treatment than doing something else with it, like, for example, landscape irrigation. So I think that's where we're going with Joanna and with Stephen. In this case, our facility is a San Jose Creek water reclamation plant. So this water is not just clean, it's actually, pretty much clean to the 1000th degree so that the water can be reused. And I will say we actually can drink this water. The law doesn't let us go there yet, but you could. It actually exceeds drinking water levels. It's just not there yet. But you guys are right. We're going to use this water for something other than just putting it back into the ocean. And that's why this is a water reclamation plan. Today, we're going to learn about San Jose Creek because this is our largest water reclamation plant that we have. And as we can see here, here's an overview of our facility. We have the east and the west side. So if you're ever driving down the 605 and the 60 and you kind of take a look over the freeway, you might see this kind of looking tanks right here. That's what this is, the water San Jose Creek water reclamation plant. Our east facility was the one that started first. And obviously over time, population grew, the demands of the facility grew, and then we expanded over to the west side. And this is the service area right here. You can see it's a large service area, even all the way up to La Cañada. So for those of you guys in the chat, go ahead and put in the chat if you're in the service area of the San Jose Creek facility. And if you're not there, just put us which city you're joining us from. Our headquarters are here in Whittier, and this is where I am right now. But I always want to know where you guys are joining us from. So you're in Whittier, Joanna's in Whittier. PV, Torrance, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Again, we got Monterey Park.
Yeah? Oh my gosh.
That's Alhambra, Inglewood, Torrance.
Inglewood. Awesome. Well, you know what? The great thing is that all of these are facilities that we serve. So as you guys saw, we have such a large, wide area, right? So we have facilities that treat. And if you go to our website, you can probably look for a map, click on each of our facilities, and it will you can pull up, I believe, a map that shows you the service area. So you can find out which one is the one that serves you. That's pretty cool. Well, thank you guys for interacting with me. I love it. So here we go back to San Jose Creek. It's a large service area. And I always like to show this because it makes us aware of the bulk of water, the span of the people that we serve. So I think this is pretty awesome. So let's get to it. What happens at San Jose Creek water reclamation plant? We have, this is an overview of our facility, bird's eye view. If right now we're doing virtual tours, one day we're going to get back to in-person tours. So I'm really excited to see that. But if we were in person, we would go ahead and walk. We would kind of park right up here and we would walk all the way down to the plant and start walking our way from here to here. And just as this is an overview, can you guys see my cursor? Genesis, can you see my cursor?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so this is the beginning of the facility, the middle, and this is the end right here. So if we were here, we would have parked here, kind of walked all of this and start going this way. What we would see is that the facility is kind of, it's laid out this way because we follow, our standard wastewater treatment process, which includes what we call primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment. And this is pretty standard wastewater treatment reclamation process. This is, this kind of standard. So as you guys can guess, there's 3 steps and we're going to be covering those steps right now. Genesis, do we have any questions before we, get into the science and everything?
Nope, we've got no questions so far.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, so this is a schematic of the technicality behind our wastewater reclamation plan. There's a lot of different steps. I don't expect anybody to try to get through this in here. This diagram, I believe, is available on our website if you want to see it, but we're going to go through it, step by step through the magic of Zoom. The first step when we get to San Jose Creek is that we have to realize that the sewage is actually 30 feet below ground. So I forgot to mention this, but sewers typically flow by gravity, meaning that they're kind of slanted to go from a high point towards a low point towards where the water treatment is. And in the case that you can't do it, you have for some reason there's a hill or some kind of structure there that blocks it, that's where we have pumping stations that kind of lift the water and move it where it needs to be hydraulically. So when we get here to San Jose Creek, the first thing we have to do is bring the water up to ground level. So this is what we have right here, our influent building. We have 4 pumps that kind of lift the water up so we can start flowing, and then it will flow at a slight, kind of like at a slow tilt, the way I showed it in the map. So here's a picture of our pumps. They do an amazing job of doing this. So once the water is lifted, we go through what we call primary treatment. Primary treatment, here's a lovely bird's eye view. These are these horizontal tanks right here. I'll play again so you guys can see it. The water flows from this side to this side, like this, from right to left. Primary treatment is based on it's a physical process. It's based on sedimentation. What we're going to do is just literally do something that Mother Nature would do, and we just kind of like speed it up a little faster. Wait, give you guys too much. So I mentioned it was a physical process. By letting the water flow very, very slow, what you're essentially achieving is you're letting anything that's heavier than the water sink to the bottom, and anything that's lighter kind of float to the top. And again, that's just gravity doing its thing. You guys might want to guess why we have lids covering the facility. Let's check this chat. The smell, yes. Thank you, Director McLean, for joining us from Santa Clarita. I just saw that right now. The smell, okay, yes. So there's actually 2. So the air quality district actually requires us to, kind of cover the tanks, but obviously it doesn't look too great. We're going to take a look at that. And there is a smell. So we try to be a good neighbor. We have these tanks covered, and also, we kind of have the visually, we don't want anything coming and picking up any trash. So that's why the tanks are covered. And this is where you guys get spared, because if we were in person, we would have popped the lid so you guys could see it, and you kind of get a little preview of that. Feel free to, give us a little frowny face or something when you're looking at this. But this is the reality. This is what raw sewage looks like. It kind of looks like brown, murky water. And we put this in a beaker right here so you guys can see. It doesn't smell that great, I'll be honest. But when you're here in a I guess one of the benefits of in-person tours, we can see all our senses to see how the water changes from this to clean water, recycled water. So that's a pretty cool benefit. So this is what it looks like under the lid. Now, this is kind of the reality of what the sewers kind of have. They should just have waste, human waste, but that doesn't mean it's a trash can. We see a lot of plastic gloves, I don't even know what, wrappers, applicators. And the lesson here is that toilets are not trash cans. Just because you can put something down the drain or down the, flush it down the toilet, doesn't mean that it really technically belongs there. Our process does include removing this, but it doesn't have to be this right here. This could have easily gone in the trash, where it belongs. So the little lesson right here is you flush only the 3 Ps. Before I mention what the 3 Ps, and maybe that gives you guys a chance to put what the 3 Ps are in the chat. I want to point this out right here. This picture got sent to me from one of our friends at the Long Beach main pumping plant, which is one of our largest facilities. And that is an, 12-foot long, 80-pound ball of rags and trash and stuff. This is stuff that gets that gets flushed down the toilet, right? And we have to be the ones to clean that up. Because it can clog our system. So periodically we can go ahead and we have to go ahead and clean our pumps and our sewers, because this is obviously not supposed to be there. We want water to keep flowing. So the message for you guys is, if you flush only the 3 Ps, you're helping keep not only your sewers a little clean, because nobody wants backups in their own home, but you're also helping us keep our sewers clean, because nobody wants backups in their streets. So let's see. Yes, that's right. We have Bill and Bonnie, poo, pee, and paper. So that is all correct. Let's see, you have pee, poo, and toilet paper, and not just any paper. It's toilet paper. Paper towels don't belong down the drain or down the flush, or any kind of flushable wipe. That's also kind of, a no-no. makeup wipes, baby wipes, you know, dental floss, all that stuff kind of belongs in the trash. Now, I know that there may be some confusing things out there. Well, if it says flushable, can we use it or not? Because, I mean, to help kind of guide the consumer into what's supposed to be doing, there was actually a law, I believe it was AB 818, that kind of requires consistent labels of products that should be, that cannot be drained down or flushed down the toilet. So this became this is the actual standard sign. So if there's something you guys can do at home is when you look for products, make sure you check for this label. That means it doesn't belong in the sewers or in down the drain. So let's do that. I see Stephanie has a question. What happens to the waste? Stephanie, if you can hold on to that, we're going to address solids like a little bit further down our conversation. Okay, so just hang tight. So remember, guys, 3 Ps and look for this sign. That's something we can all do at home every day, and help do your part to protect the sewers. Okay, so now we're going to look under the lids. So after the water has been I mentioned how when you go through sedimentation tanks, it flows very slowly. The picture on the left is kind of what that scum looks like. That's that stuff that floats above the water. Could be fats and oils and grease. And you can see the water's like a murky brown. The picture on the right kind of shows what's on the bottom. It's kind of like silts and, grease and stuff like, or, kind of like clumpy stuff. So we remove that. And here's the schematic of how that's done. We have a system of flight and chains that kind of move across. So here's the chains and these are the flights. And as the paddles kind of move across the bottom, they scoop anything solid to the bottom. We call that sludge. Those are the solids. I think Stephanie's curious. We are going to talk about that. And as the flight kind of rotates to the top part of the tank, that's when we kind of scoop the scum away. And we like showing this because this actually Zoom's probably the only way we would be able to see it. If we were doing this in person, it'd be kind of hard to get the concept. But by just doing this, we remove about 60% of the pollution. What we want is really this middle water. And when you look at this one, you could see this is what we're after. To then move on to the next step. The next step is what we call secondary treatment. And this is probably the magic of water treatment itself, is kind of condensed into this slide. I'll play it again once you guys can see it right here. Secondary treatment is a biological process. We actually use bacteria to do the heavy lifting for us, to do the work for us. And what you guys see right here is an overview of the secondary treatment. It's actually a 2-step process. We call the first step is it's the mixed liquor. You have aeration right here. And then the second step is secondary sedimentation. So this is step A and step B. If we're here in person, we would be walking through here, but we get just as good a view, kind of see what's going on. The first thing that you should notice is that we have a lot of bubbles. And in some cases we have lots of bubbles, no bubbles, a little bit of bubbles. That's very, very important. Anybody wants to guess why there's bubbles? Go ahead and put in the chat. I'll give you guys a minute. Air, yes, I like it. No one else? Biological agent working. Oxygen removal. Let's get to it. So we tend to think of bacteria as bad things. COVID didn't help. We think of bacteria, viruses make us sick, but bacteria do play a beneficial part in our society. We ourselves as humans have bacteria in our stomachs to help us break down food. And that's exactly what's happening here. We use a certain culture of bacteria to help break down the organic content that's suspended in the water, in this, the water that we went from step 1. That water here is mixed with this, we call it mixed liquor. It's like a sludge where the bacteria live. And that's why you guys can see, remember the water was kind of translucent and clear, but this one looks more like a solid brown. That's what gives the sludge itself, where the bacteria lives, gives it this deep brown color. Like anything that lives, yes, you're right. Bill says aerobic bacteria, you're correct. Like any organism that lives, bacteria need food source and a supply for energy. So in this case, we have the organic content, the nitrogen content in our waste is the food source for the bacteria, but they also need to breathe. So this is why we have the bubbles. We have diffuser plates that get air from the environment, and you kind of pump it up through these plates that create bubbles, and it kind of keeps oxygen available to the bacteria throughout the whole tank. Now, I do have to explain to you guys that the water doesn't just flow from the bottom of the screen out this way and then it moves on to the next step. It actually serpentines. So every 4 channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, is part of the process. The water kind of meanders through the thing, and by controlling the amount of oxygen that the bacteria have access to at each of these ports, that's why we have these logs right here, we're able to control the kind of bacteria and target a specific nutrient in the wastewater. So aerobic bacteria that use the oxygen, those probably targeting carbon right here, and that's why we see lots of bubbles. And if we have low oxygen, we call that anoxic, we're targeting something else. And if we have anaerobic, we're probably targeting nitrogen. So that's why you may be wondering why this looks different from this and different from that. There are actually the water's in different stages of treatment right here. I always think this is pretty cool and like the highlight of my day whenever I see this video. Any questions? Let's check the chat. Genesis, any questions?
Nope, no questions here so far.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No questions here.
Okay, awesome. So let's see. This is like a live view of what the bubbles look up close. This is kind of showing us the aeration, how actually as much bubbles that you can actually get. Now we know that they're helping the bacteria get access to the oxygen all the way across the tank. That's pretty cool. These are the diffuser plates that I was talking about. You get oxygen and you kind of pump it through the bottom. And as you're introducing the bacteria, it kind of everybody gets, air. This is actually a nematode. This is actually a lot of questions we get asked is, what are these microorganisms? What do these bacteria look like? And that's what one of these little worms are here. Not a worm, but I'll just rewind it a little bit. But this is what it looks like. This is one of our friendly people. We have an amazing laboratory that kind of keeps track of everything for us. They put the seal of approval that these guys are doing their job. Again, this is a benefit that bacteria do for us. And that's why they have a special place in our hearts. Let's move on. But once they've done what they need to do, they need to be removed. So I mentioned that secondary treatment was step A and B. Step A is adding the bacteria, letting the bacteria consume the nitrogen and the carbon. And then once they're done with that, they move on to the next step, which is step B, clarification or sedimentation. You just remove them from the wastewater. Let me play it again. As we can see, the water already looks much clearer. What you guys see down here is kind of the sludge settled out. Because we are bubbling the air, it keeps the mixed liquor and the sewage in suspension, the treated water in suspension. So that's why it has that solid brown color. But once you remove the bubbles and you just let the water settle, we can see how it's being cleaned. So the way we remove the bacteria is very simple. You just remove the air, let the water flow slowly. And as we can see, the sludge sets at the bottom. And by the time the water reaches the end of the tank, it's already super clear. I mean, you could just see from the fact that it's like, you could see to the bottom, you can see the flights right here and the chains. And by the time we get over here, which is the end, we are already much, much cleaner water. And what we do here is we know that the sludge is at the bottom towards the back of the plant, towards the back of this picture. So what we do is we have weirs that kind of collect the water from the top. So only the water from the top moves on to the next step. Then we move on to tertiary treatment, because I mentioned this is a water reclamation plant. Does anybody have a Brita filter at home? I always ask our 5th grade classes when they come, and nobody knows what a Brita filter is. But a Brita filter, you can get water and you kind of put in a pitcher, or sometimes you attach it to your the faucet in your kitchen sink, and the water goes through this filter media right here. Oh yes, Susan has a Brita filter. Thank you guys. I always tell the students and nobody knows what that is, but this right here, our filters right here are kind of super large Brita filters. It's the same concept of filtration. What we do is we have filter media that you push the water through, and as it flows from the top to the bottom, any kind of suspended solid or anything that's in the water gets absorbed by the media, and the water cleans, the water flows clean through the system. Our filters are actually, oh, here's a close-up of our filters without the water. The first thing that you can notice is that why is this black right here? Well, that's actually the top of the filter media. Our filter media has gravel, sand, and anthracite coal, which is this black stuff right here. So we have, like, let me back it up a little bit. We have quite a few filters right here. The water flows from top to bottom. At any given time, we're actually repairing or cleaning one of our filters. So this is what it would look like. And here's a slide showing what the filter is. So the water flows from here, from the top, and it gets, pulled. And we have the sand, the water, the cold, which is what you see, and sand and the gravel. And we take the water from the bottom, and now it's been cleaned, just like a Brita filter at home. This is what clean water looks like. We have, this is where we started with, and this is where we're looking at. So feel free to give, a little clap if you want to, because this is where the magic happens. And, in 10 to 12 hours, we go, wait, I messed up, sorry. There we go. It plays so fast. Oh, I'll pause it. There we go. So just 10 to 12 hours, we have sewage, and you can see from that right here on the right hand side how clear it looks. So what we do here in San Jose Creek, it's exactly what happens out in Mother Nature, in the sun, with the sun, the nature and gravity. It just happens a lot faster than Mother Nature can handle it, but it's basically the same principles right here. Did we have any questions? Oh, thank you guys. Awesome. All right, so what we're here to learn. What happens with this recycled water? Well, recycled water can be used in a variety of ways. We have been recycling water since 1962 with the beginning of one of our first facilities, but over time, I guess we've come to realize the importance of recycled water and kind of change our mind that sewage is not really a waste, it's actually a resource. And that's kind of like the little message that I want to convey with you guys today. We have, let's see. We have 5 different ways in which we use our recycled water, and we can see them here. We have agriculture, industry, landscaping, groundwater, and environmental. These are kind of the typical uses that our water is being used. I know some of you guys mentioned drinking. Our water is not used for that yet. It could happen, but this is not what's happening right now. We're going to talk a little bit about what are these different uses. So agriculture. Up in our facilities in the Antelope Valley, we have we're actually farmers up there. We are growing fodder crops for cattle, and we use the water to grow spinach or oats to feed the cattle industry. So our water is used for agriculture up north. We also use it for industries. There are local businesses that maybe use water as part, maybe to create steam, to be part of their industrial process. So we can use recycled water. Landscaping, that's probably probably the second biggest use for us. So anytime you see a purple pipe out in the community, if you have seen one, go ahead and put it in the chat. The purple pipe is the color of recycled water, and that means that you're using reused water instead of buying potable water to water the lawns. This is normally what we see in golf courses, parks, street medians, cemeteries. If you're here from Whittier, Rose Hills uses 100% recycled water to keep their lawn clean from our facility. But yeah, keep an eye out next time you're going out to see where recycled water is being used. It's definitely a great way to use local resources to maintain our quality of life, because here in Southern California, we're in the desert. Groundwater recharge. So this is a biggie right here. Groundwater recharge. So let's take it back a little bit. I mentioned we're in a desert. Here it probably rains, maybe 4 days a year, 16 inches max. How do we help Mother Nature replenish our groundwater aquifers? The only time she can do that is when it rains, but it doesn't rain here that often. We use water more frequent than that. And this is where our groundwater recharge program comes in. This is actually the biggest use of our recycled water. So with the recycled water, what we're actually doing is we're putting it back into the ground and then just letting Mother Nature do what she does best. It's just letting the water sit and travel through underground. As it's traveling underground, it's being cleaned again. It's going through the natural process and it's replenishing our groundwater resources. I have a slide on that right after this one, actually. But let's finish the last use of our recycled water, that's environmental resources. So up in the AD, we also have our ponds. Here we have San Jose Creek. This is just a way to keep a sustainable habitats year-round, because obviously it doesn't rain as often. So this is a way we can help nature and our little critter friends, have a home year-round. To date, I mentioned how we have, we've been recycling water since 1962. We have close to well over 950 sites throughout LA County that use our recycled water. And, obviously we want that to keep going. We want people to use recycled water so that we rely less on potable water that's actually being imported. I believe recycled water is actually 1/3 of the cost. So obviously we want to be sustainable. We want to be, self-sufficient in this. And this is what we should be doing, relying on recycled water. So keep an eye out for this. And my computer froze. That's okay. Let's give it a minute. I will check the chat while my computer stops doing this.
You can
Dennis, do we have any questions we can address right now while you give my PowerPoint a chance to catch up?
Yeah, so we had a question about the filters.
Yes.
How long does that process take and how do the filters clean it?
Awesome question. So I realized I didn't give a breakdown of the time, and I'll kind of catch up right now while my computer fixes itself. But filtration takes on average 2 to 3 hours. Again, we tend to think that we see water moving fast, but the whole key here is you're giving the water a chance to move very, very slowly. One of the questions that we get asked is, it's an excellent question, is what do you do with these filters? Do you clean them, throw them away? What's going on? And that's the beauty of this setup. We have the water normally flows from top to bottom, but if we pressure force the water to go from the bottom up, this is what we call the backflow, a backwash. You break up the media and you're able to dislodge anything that's caught in there, and you send that water to the beginning of the facility and you clean it again. Obviously, this only works very so often. So at that point in time, you actually do have to replace the media every few, I'm not quite sure, I want to say years, but there is a process to replace it. It's just not done daily.
Okay,
Any other?
and then while I go to the next question, do you want to quit your presentation and restart it, or?
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, perfect. And I will unspotlight, and then we can get to the other questions. Let's see here. So how did you want to go over how long each process takes throughout
Yes.
the?
Yes, I can do that. Okay, so I realized I didn't say that. And the first step, sedimentation, which is the primary treatment, takes about 2 hours. Again, we let the water flow, even though it's only maybe 300, 400 feet, we let the water flow very, very, very slowly. Secondary treatment, the activated sludge, which is where the bacteria are 4 to 6 hours. Again, we only see the distance that it goes from the beginning to the end of the tank, but we have to remember that the water meanders through and it's controlled, it's kind of held in those tanks a specific amount of time. So that's another 4 to 6 hours. And then it might change a little bit. And then filtration again is another 2 hours. But I haven't finished the treatment, so we may not be there yet.
Okay, awesome. And how are you doing now with the?
Sorry, it's still taking its time.
Okay, no worries.
I have to force quit this, sorry.
So let's let me ask you another question, and then I can share my screen as well.
Do you have my presentation?
I have
a presentation? Sure, we can do that.
All right, perfect. Okay, so let me just ask one more question. And so what is used to sanitize or disinfect the water while we're?
Oh yes, that was the next step that I was going to talk about. So
okay.
Well, we can go ahead and jump into it. Sure, let's do it. So after filtration, the water's gone through the filter, then the next step is to disinfect the water. And that's where we use, essentially the chemical we're using is chlorine, just like we use bleach at home, but it's just in a different form, in a different chemical compound. So we use chlorine to disinfect the water. And what I will hope I'm able to show you, Genesis, if you have a presentation up, let me know, is chlorine contact tanks. So these are the tanks that are at the end of our facility, and they're kind of channels where you would add the bleach or the chlorine at the beginning of the facility, and you just let the water kind of flow through very, very slowly, because there's such thing as chlorine contact time. Just because you magically add the chlorine, just picture a glass. If I have a glass right here and I add the chlorine, I probably have to like mix it just to spread it around the whole container. That's the same thing that we're doing there. These tanks are actually covered so that we have, so the water's already been cleaned, so that we don't need to like get it dirty again. So there we go. Is that my screen or your screen? Who's that?
That's my screen.
Okay, so let's see where we're going.
All right, let's see. So disinfection.
We went through that.
And then.
Oh, this is the one I wanted to talk about. Did I talk about this? I don't think I talked about groundwater recharge. Okay, let's go for it. So I had mentioned that groundwater recharge is one of our largest use of recycled water. And I love this because it sounds so like, what is that? But if you're local to the area, if you ever wonder what these like dry ponds looking at, like south, like along the 605 freeway, kind of between Beverly, like near Pico Rivera, these are actually our groundwater recharge basins. And the way we can think about it is they're places where the groundwater table is very high. So when we put water here, it soaks into the ground. And this is a way we recharge water. You can see kind of how shallow it is from right here. Let's play the video, Genesis. Play it again. So this is, I mentioned how we've been doing groundwater recycling since 1962. This is where the water was being recycled. Again, this is 50% of our groundwater recycling goes in here. And it's a way that we're doing, helping Mother Nature. We're not injecting anything. It's called a spreading basin, because literally you put the water there and it'll eventually soak into the ground. And what you see right here on the left side is actually the San Gabriel River, I believe. So this has a bike path right here. So if you're able driving by, or riding there, you'll see what that is. I love this slide because it actually shows you many, I guess it summarizes our water recycling, our endeavor. Here we have on the left, we have water recycling, our facility. And then all the way on the right, we have a golf course, California golf course. If you're from here, they're using the water to keep their lawn clean. And then in the middle right here is the San Jose Creek, which is where our facility gets its name. Our water gets discharged to the river right here, to the creek right here, so that it makes its way to the groundwater basins that are further down. So I love it. And along the way, it like helps support habitats as well. We talked about the slide already. Oh, I love it. So this, okay, sorry, go back a little bit more. Yes, so this, if you ever wonder how the water is discharged into the San Jose Creek, this is where outflow looks like. It's really just a giant pipe, and our operators have the ability to control when to discharge the water here and when to send it out. So this would be where the outflow is when it goes out into the San Jose Creek, eventually to the San Gabriel River or to our spreading ground basins. All right. So that's kind of like the journey of the water. I know some of you guys were wondering what's happening with the soil, with the solids. I know Stephanie had a question and some of you guys have other questions. If I don't address it now, we're going to address it towards the end, so you guys have an opportunity to ask questions. So in the beginning of my presentation, I had mentioned how we have a system of pipes, 1,400 miles of sewers that kind of keep us connected together. And what we're seeing here is our facilities, kind of like those are the red dots. And the blue lines are kind of like an overview, not all of them, but most of the main sewers. The important thing to figure out here is that all these facilities are connected and everything flows to the JWPCP, which is the facility on the lower corner. It's right underneath joint outfall system. This system is called the joint outfall system, and it has a very specific purpose. all our facilities upstream of the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant in Carson, which is the last one right there, all the way on the left side, reclaim water. But the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant is actually where all the solids are handled. Because our sewers are all connected, all the solids from all these different facilities, San Jose Creek, Los Coyotes, Pomona, make their way down to Carson, and that's where all the solids are handled. And again, this is one of the benefits of having a regional system. All the water can be reused upstream, and we manage the solids over here. So how our solids happen? Again, we rely on our friends, the bacteria. Pretty much we scoop anything that's left from primary treatment, a little bit of we call it return activated sludge or waste sludge from secondary treatment are kind of gathered and put into these things that we called anaerobic digesters. These are these round circular tanks that we have. These are actually kind of, I know it sounds weird to say, but it's kind of like a giant cow stomach. You put all the food in there, you have bacteria in there, you close the lid, what's going to happen? Again, we have our friends, the anaerobic bacteria, and we can see a little picture of what they look like on the right here on the left side. They feed on the content, on all that sludge. And in as little as 10 to 14 days, they've kind of consumed it, and there's leftovers right there. But the byproduct of them eating this is that they make gas, and we call this digester gas. Digester gas is composed, has methane content in it, and methane is similar to natural gas, so it has an energy value to it. Wait, go back one more. Play the video. So what you guys see on top of the tanks right there, you see all these tubings and pipes. Those are recovering the gas, and it's very efficient. It's, you know, there's it's collecting every single little drop of methane gas because it has power. It's energy value to it. Okay, now go to the next one. The tanks themselves are huge. I mean, this door right there there's a little piece of wood. Yeah, that's 6 feet tall. So these are huge tanks. And again, it's just a void where you put the sludge, you close the lid, the bacteria will decompose because there's no oxygen in there. We take the gas, we're going to do something with it. And believe it or not, that solid itself that's left over, that has even another value, another play with it. So according to us and the sanitation districts, it's not trash, and it's not a waste until we say it's a waste. The gas itself is routed to our energy facility in Carson. This is our total energy facility where we take the biogas and we put it through a power plant and we create electricity. We create around 20 megawatts of electricity, and that's enough for 20,000 homes. A lot of this power is used to power our facility itself. So energy-wise, we're self-sufficient, but sometimes there is power left and we sell it to the grid. So homes down there are actually using energy from waste. Isn't that awesome? I think that's really cool. But I mentioned that the solids, even the solids left from the anaerobic digesters, have a purpose. And what we're seeing here are centrifuges. So the digested solids, at this point, whatever's left over from the anaerobic digesters is called biosolids. And it's kind of like a thick goo, kind of very watery, but it's also very, very thick. The first step is that we dewater it because there's a purpose to this. So this is how our centrifuges are. Think about it like the spin cycle of your washing machine, except instead of rolling like this vertically, it's actually rolling horizontally. As it spins, it expels the water out and only the material kind of stays through the bottom. So that's how we separate the water from the biosolids. I'm gonna take a sip of water. All right, so this is the leftover biosolids, which we call cake. It looks like crumbled cake. And this has been dewatered. And what are we doing it? Why are we collecting it? Well, this is actually the next step in our resource recovery, which is what we call nutrient recovery, because this is actually, you will be used for compost. Let's see the next slide, please. So we collect this biosolids and we take it to our composting sites. We have quite several ones that we work with. But compost is, or at this point, the biosolids is mixed with agricultural waste, like green waste. And we make compost with it, which is a way to supplement your soil, kind of like fertilizer. We use it to supplement agricultural crops up in the Antelope Valley, or anybody that really wants that. Wait, I'm not ready to say thank you, Genesis. I have a lot more to say. Maybe take me off the screen share. All right. So what I hope you guys were able to see there today, and sorry my presentation didn't work out, is that starting from waste, what we think of waste or sewage, we are now able to have recycled water, which we saw that gets used 950 sites throughout LA County. We also have energy. We saw that from the biogas, from the management of the solids themselves. We have produced biogas, and that's green energy. And then we also have biosolids. That's the third one. So nutrients, energy, and water, just from our solid waste. I mean, from our wastewater itself. I think that's, much more than we could have ever conceived. So it's actually pretty cool in my opinion. So with that, I would like to answer now questions.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad because we have a whole bunch for you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, cool. So where do we start? Wow. Okay, let's start with, and again, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. This allows us to keep them more organized that way. So please use the Q&A feature if you have any questions. Okay, so we had a few questions about the solids in the beginning, but now we answered that. So if you have any additional questions, follow up on the solids, please put them in the Q&A feature. All right, so where does the sludge go?
Well, the sludge is the sludge from the primary treatment and the secondary treatment. I mentioned that that's actually what's collected at the bottom of each tank in our water reclamation plants, and it flows by gravity to our facility in Carson, where it then goes to through our anaerobic digester and eventually becomes biogas and compost. So I hope that addresses that question.
Okay, great. And so there was a question about primary treatment and how it seems like that's the only part that's covered at San Jose Creek. Is it because of the potential for evaporation losses, or why is it the only part that we cover?
I wasn't able to show this in the tour, and that's an excellent question. The primary treatment tanks are actually covered because pretty much the smell and safety, I read that too, visual wise. But what I just realized I wasn't able to show were the chlorination tanks. Those are also covered because at that point the water is disinfected, and we don't want the sun to eat up, and we don't want the water to be exposed. So it's actually covered. I just didn't get a chance to show it. We have other facilities that are not San Jose Creek, so maybe some in the Antelope Valley, they don't have to be covered. It's just, in this case, our air quality district requires us to have them covered. If you go to visit one of our facilities in the Antelope Valley, they wouldn't be covered. I have to say, sorry, I forgot to mention this. For our friends that are wondering what happens to the sludge, we just had a tour of our joint water pollution control plant last week, April 30th. So that covers the sludge in more detail. Maybe Genesis, you can put the link, or you can put a link to our YouTube channel. All these are being recorded so you can learn more or go into more detail. So if I didn't do a good job of explaining, go back to our video library. All right, I'm ready for the next question.
Okay, and that link to our YouTube channel is now in the chat. So
thank you.
Take it from there, click on it, it'll take you straight to our page, unless there's a typo. But it's Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts is our URL. All right, so this one's a little lengthy. So
I'll do my best.
Okay, so this is from Bill. Has anyone anywhere tried the co-location of solid waste and water treatment? And then explanation on the back end. Given the need for a slight slope to move the water being treated downhill, wouldn't a location atop a nearly closed solid waste facility be ideal? Also, it would provide a convenient place to discard solids collecting during primary treatment.
Can you repeat the middle part again? Actually, I'll pull it up on the chat.
Yeah. No. So we have so given the need for a slight slope to move the water being treated downhill, wouldn't a location atop a nearly closed solid waste facility be ideal?
Okay, so this is a place, I understand the question is, what he's saying is, why do we have to collect all the sludge in one place? Can we treat it locally? In this case, the joint outfall system was not designed for that, but that actually does happen up in the Antelope Valley, where the facility, the solids are being located are managed closer to the wastewater treatment plant. To be honest, I think this is just the result of where our facilities were built. Everything already flows down to the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant, and it has a lot more area than our facilities up north or upstream, sorry. And that's really the only location that, I mean, we actually get the benefit of having all these installations in one place as opposed to in the other facilities upstream, and it maximizes our use for expansion for more water recycling upstream, which is where we're already kind of set up to do. So unless Basil's there and he can help me, I feel like that is a reasonable explanation. And I could,
if you want, I could add to it. Maybe I should turn. Good morning. I'll see most of you folks at 10:30. Part of the reason there's a huge economic savings by having all the solids processing at one location at the joint plant. And all we're doing is, as Maria explained, we collect the solids and all we have to do is just put it back in the sewer. It goes with water that's too salty for reuse without costing us any more energy. And then we do it all at one location and we generate power, as Maria said. So imagine if you had to do solids processing 7 times, the overhead would quadruple at least. And then another question is, why don't you locate it at the top of a landfill so you can kind of slope it down? We own landfills, but you don't want to build stuff on landfills because they're always settling. So you only want to use landfills, closed landfills for park spaces, because if you put any structure on it, you're going to have settling and it's going to undermine, damage your structure. Hopefully that answered that very long question. That was very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
And if you want to hear more from Basil, tune in at 10:30 at our Prop 218 infamous.
Let's save all the hard questions for Basil.
Yeah.
No, I'm ready. I'm here. Let's move on to the next question, Genesis.
Yeah, so tertiary treatment water is essentially potable. Why use it for groundwater recharging when it is eventually pumped out again? It just needs to be retreated. So why not just add it to the water supply?
Okay, so that's what we call direct potable reuse. To be honest, there are projects out there that do this. There's the GRIP project in Orange County. We are working with partner agencies to be able to do this as well, but groundwater recharge has an important role in our society. And again, this is where we're kind of taken care of at this point. There is the capability that you can put the water charges directly. The infrastructure is not there. Law-wise, we're also not there yet, but that could be the future. That's actually happening right now in countries that have limited water supplies like Israel. Correct me if I'm wrong, Basil. Is there one of the ones that already use it?
Yeah, when you're done, I'll add to your answers, which I think is very good. What I would say is that the water that Maria shows, it's been percolating into the ground and it's been going into our water supply. Back in 1962, there probably wasn't as much acceptances. People were going, yuck. And so we knew the water was essentially meeting drinking water standards, but by percolating it through the spreading basin, you have another level of safety. We have in-soil treatment. So all the people back in 62 that were grossed out and like, you can't do this, I think we've come a long way. And I think one of the projects Maria is referring to is working with Metropolitan Water District, Southern California, where the water that's coming from our plant in Carson may be purified and put right back into the drinking water supply. So that water is going in the spreading basin, is going into our drinking water supply, but it goes through that next level of treatment and then someone pulls it out in a well.
And I have to add to that, Basil, if you don't mind. I always tell our 5th grade courses or our school courses, there's only the water that we have here available on Earth there's only a limited amount. We don't create water. Water just goes through different stages in the water cycle. So recycled water is something that's been happening naturally throughout millions of years, right? So it's what we're doing here is kind of interfering into that step once the water's been in human contact and speeding up that process along and then putting it back safely back into nature. So I hope that answers your question. Good question.
And if it doesn't, please feel free to use it. Follow up.
Yes.
So can you explain to us, this is another question, can you explain to us what the difference is between the West Basin water recycling
yes,
in El Segundo and the San Jose Creek water reclamation plant?
well, I'm not too familiar with the process, but West Basin is one of our partner agencies, and they're kind of managing the waste similar to us, but for City of LA, El Segundo. So if we go back to our first map that shows our area, I mentioned how we kind of don't, our City of LA is not in our service area. We kind of handle everything outside. West Basin is inside City of LA.
Okay, great. So next question. What is done with the spent anthracite coal after replacement?
I believe it is, I don't think it's current. I want to say it's regenerated, it's cleaned and regenerated. Am I right or wrong? It is,
Yeah,
right?
I think, yeah. So periodically they'll take it offsite and regenerate it.
Yeah.
And
And that's,
then, yeah.
I
So
was gonna say that's one of the benefits of using anthracite coal is that it can be recleaned and regenerated and you can reuse it again, but you got to take it offsite and do it somewhere else.
yeah, and I want to add to West Basin, they're a drinking water company, so they supply drinking water. What we're tasked to do is clean up wastewater. And as Maria said so eloquently, we see it as a resource in the semi-arid Southern California. So we're producing this recycled water that we may convey to West Basin or other water companies.
Thank you, Basil.
So this question is from Thomas. Is sewage water stored somewhere before it gets reclaimed?
Wonderful question. It is not, but I kind of have a middle answer there. Here at the San Jose Creek Water Reclamation Plant, we just completed a project that's called the San Jose Creek Flow Equalization Project. Big fancy word for holding tank for sewage. So what we do is we have sewage that's partially treated, so it's gone through primary treatment, and then we hold it, we store it, and we treat it later in the night, kind of to balance the flows in our wastewater treatment system. And now I'll explain why. So in the mornings when everybody wakes up and everybody's getting ready for school, showering, cooking, and all that stuff, that's when we have a high inflow of water because wastewater is being produced and then it comes to our facilities. But the people that want the recycled water most likely want it at night. If you're watering parks, you're not going to water the park when the kids are there. You're going to water the park at night. But that's when we also have low flow because people are sleeping. So by storing the water, the flow equalization project, by storing the partially treated water, we're able to kind of stabilize the quantity of the flow. That also has some operational benefits to us in terms of managing our chemicals, but it is a way that we're able to produce a steady stream of recycled water. That's as close to your answer as I can get, because that's the truth. Next.
Right. So do the districts plan on using any kind of membrane filtration in the future if it's not already used?
Well, that's where we have our partners with. Actually, I believe we're using UV filtration up in Santa Clarita or Valencia. Is that true?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So in Santa Clarita, because we've been we discharge to the river up there, and the standards are a little bit tougher in terms of chloride. We've put in some microfiltration facilities at our Valencia plant. So we're going to be using microfiltration up there, and then also down at Joint Plant in Carson, the project that's in a facility planning phase could result in using microfiltration, if that was their question.
Okay, now we got Joseph with a really extra fun question. On what day of the year do the districts see the highest intake?
Okay, I know where this is going and I have to do my due diligence and explain something. I know we want to talk about the Super Bowl, but I have to mention that when it rains, we also get a high influx of water, because when it rains, water is not only going down the streets and it can get into our sewers, and then we have more water that comes into our facility. So the theoretical answer is when it rains, we have the highest amounts of flow. It's not that more people are flushing more, it's just the water's coming into the ground from the system, and then we have an increase. However, what I think our friend Joseph is referring to is the Super Bowl. So we like to say the story of the Super Bowl flush. Has anybody heard of the Super Bowl flush besides Joe? No? Yes?
Not
Okay.
the actual term, I haven't.
No? Okay. So what happens is that I've heard, I can't confirm this or not, but during the Super Bowl, everybody's there kind of watching the game. And then the first commercial break during the halftime, during the Super Bowl, that's when everybody runs out to use the restroom. And then that's when you have like a big wave of it's kind of registered in our wastewater treatment that you have a big wave of sewage coming our way because everybody's using the restroom at the same time. So our levels kind of go up, and that's what we call the Super Bowl flush. Does that answer your question?
Halftime.
Halftime show, yes, you're right. Sorry.
No. I mean, yeah. Okay. Got. I will remember that one for the next.
Yes. So hold it till like after this, the halftime, I would say.
For the next time Snoop
Next
Dogg.
time. Yeah.
Snoop Dogg's performing and stuff. All right. So next question. Are businesses required to use recycled water?
I don't believe here in LA County they are required to use recycled water. That is, it's really for the city to place requirements. Cities are the ones that are in charge of buying the water, providing the water for their constituents. So that's not for us to answer, but we do have a lot of businesses that use the recycled water. So they're not required, but if they can, good for them.
Okay, cool. Next, another question. Does solar play any part in what you all do?
I have not heard of any solar projects that are associated with us. Our main core in energy production is based on biogas. Besides what we talked about today on our total energy plan from our digesters, we also have power from our landfills that our power production plant from Puente Hills and also up in Calabasas. Those would be the only forms that we're considering at this time.
Yeah, we have an energy group that's always looking at other ways of generating power. So they're always trying to pencil out whether solar, for example, would make economic sense. We've tried things up in Antelope Valley and they didn't pencil out as much, but they're always looking if the technology changes.
Itself, yeah.
Yeah, and they may be looking at reevaluating that now, but we're always looking for ways to generate our own power. It's a huge savings for us and our ratepayers.
All right, cool. If there are any more questions, please put them in the Q&A. Please put them in the Q&A going once.
Wait, and if you're not, go ahead and put in the chat where you heard about, where you heard about today's tour. So I'd like to know what, how you found out about us.
All right, and while you do that, we have another question from Raymond. Do the sanitation districts provide processed wastewater to the Water Replenishment District, or WRD, for their own processing to inject back into the ground?
Yes, well, WRD is one of our member partners, and some of our water does get allocated to them, and then they go ahead and further treat it. So they're our wonderful partners.
Can I add to Maria's? Yeah, and the video that Maria showed of the spreading basin, our partner in that. So we provide the water and WRD is the end user of it, and we work with LA County that moves the water around. So it's a three-way partnership. We provide it to WRD, and LA County moves the water around in the flood basins. It's been a long-standing relationship. What did you say, 1962?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From when Basil was around. You were there. All right. Well, I'd love to see what I heard on the chat. We heard from my professor, Riohano, from Facebook, Professor Katnick. He's my hero. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We definitely are here to help support, the educational needs. So if anybody's interested in this presentation for their school, their city organization, we can definitely help, facilitate that. We're also bilingual, hablamos español. Entonces, if you want us to go there, we can definitely do that. Oh, LA County Sanitation District's newsletter.
Oh, the Prop 218 mailer.
Oh, yay.
They're here for the information meeting. Yay.
Okay, Basil has a core audience already.
That'll get started at 10:30 promptly.
Yes.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? Oh, how widely used is ultraviolet?
It is an alternative to this. So ultraviolet technology is kind of like the counterpart to chlorination. It's a way you would disinfect the water. We do have facilities that do use UV filtration. I believe, is it?
Whittier Narrows
does it, yeah.
And then we're also going to be doing it in Santa Clarita, because when you use UV ultraviolet to disinfect, you use less bleach, less chlorine,
Right.
and so you produce less salt at the back end that comes out of treatment plants. So to help meet those the regional board's limits for the amount of chloride in the effluent coming out of the plants in the Santa Clarita Valley, we're going to be utilizing UV. I think at both Saugus and Valencia will be we have two treatment plants in Santa Clarita. One's the Saugus plant, one's a Valencia plant. They both will be using UV to help disinfect.
Awesome. And that was from Councilwoman McLean. So perfect, from Santa Clarita. Awesome. Thank you for your question. And with that, I'll leave it to you, Maria, for closing, and I'll put some links in there while.
Yes.
And then we're going to start with at 10:30, we'll be back. So please stay tuned. 10:30, we're going to talk about the Prop 218, our information meeting.
Thank you, Genesis. So just to wrap up, I thank you for spending Saturday morning. Stay tuned for Basil. Remember the 3 Ps. Remember the role recycled water plays for us. And I hope you're able to join us for future tours. We do have tours. We almost have one every month. So go ahead and check our website, www.lacsd.org/tours. We have an amazing one coming up in, I believe it's in June, specifically focused on our ocean monitoring program. So definitely give us a shot. Keep checking back with us to see what kind of tours. And if you have seen this one, come back again and then ask us even harder questions. Then we'll know you came back, and we'll make sure Basil hosts that tour. So with that, I'll thank you. If you want to stay for the Prop 218, don't log off, and have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. And then I will post a little cover slide, and we will be back here at 10:30 promptly. So one moment, and I will share that.
All right.
Basil, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Genesis. And you can hear me just fine?
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Proposition 218 information meeting about the proposed changes in our service charge rate in the joint outfall system. I have about a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll take questions. All right, so let's get going. And I think most of you were here earlier this morning for Maria's presentation on our joint outfall system. So I won't go into as much detail in terms of wastewater treatment process, but I'll tell you a little bit about the sanitation districts. We're an agency that was formed in 1923. And as you saw in Maria's presentation, back in 1920s, raw sewage was going into our rivers and ocean, and it led to a life expectancy in LA County of about 55 years of age. But people knew there had to be a better way. So we were formed, and we were formed to regionally collect and treat wastewater. The first sanitation district was formed, if you can see my cursor. Genesis, let me know if you can see the cursor, is what we call Thank you. South Bay City Sanitation District. And that's grown, let me back up, and that's grown to be now 24 sanitation districts. We have 24 sanitation districts. We serve 5.5 million people in LA County. So we have the buying power of a large agency, but yet we have local control. So each of these 24 sanitation districts are based on drainage area, not political boundaries, because we want to gravity flow the sewage, as Maria described, to each of our 11 wastewater treatment plants. So each sanitation district, based on drainage area, has a board of directors that's made up of the mayor of a city within that boundaries. And for unincorporated areas, that would be one of the members of Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. And I'll use District 20 as a simple example up in Antelope Valley. That district has in its drainage area as the city of Palmdale and unincorporated Los Angeles County. So it has a representatives from Palmdale and someone from the board of directors. So that logic applies for every one of our districts. So the buying power of a large agency, but local control. Today, we're here to focus on 17 of the 24 sanitation districts. that we call the joint outfall system, the area you see here in the light blue. These 17 have an even closer relationship than 24 sanitation districts overall. They all, they're connected via trunk sewers that you see here, these yellow lines, and there's 7 wastewater treatment plants, these different circles within the joint outfall system. So let's say a treatment plant in La Cañada can't handle the flow. That wastewater can go in the sewer and could wind up all the way down in Carson. And since all of you were here for the earlier tour, I won't get into the details of that as much, but they're interconnected, sharing resources, sharing facilities, sharing staff. And this this joint outfall system treats sewage generated by 73 of the 88 cities in LA County. That's roughly 350 million gallons of sewage or wastewater every day. And that's enough sewage to fill the Rose Bowl, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times a day. That comes to our joint outfall system treatment plants. It gets conveyed or flowed through our sewers every day. 350 million gallons of sewage every day that needs to be treated every day, cleaned every day, so it doesn't go into our rivers and ocean. I think Maria showed you this in the earlier slides, so I won't spend much time on it. She talked about there's the local sewer line, and that's very key. Depending on where you live, you have a smaller diameter sewer in your street, and it's typically owned by your city or the county. Then that sewer feeds into one of our trunk sewers. These are large sewers. Some of them is as large as 12 feet in diameter. And to give you an example what a trunk sewer looks like, here's a sewer being repaired by sanitation district. You can see those guys are probably 6 feet tall and how big that thing is. We have about 1,200 miles of trunk sewer all throughout the joint outfall system. So here's the joint outfall system. This is the area that we collect sewer from. And people always say, well, what cities are in the joint outfall system? If you live in Altadena, Pasadena, Arcadia, Glendora, Azusa, all the way to Claremont, you're in the joint outfall system. Going south, Norwalk, Whittier, East LA, even portions of that, Huntington Park, Southgate, Downey, Linwood, Inglewood, Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, Palos Verdes. These are one of some of the 73 cities that the joint outfall system collects the sewage, cleans the sewage, tries to turn it into a resource so we can deliver on our mission of protecting public health and the environment. And six of these 7 treatment plants produce recycled water. And if you were there for Maria's earlier presentation today at 9, you saw a close-up of this treatment plant, the San Jose Creek Water Reclamation Plant. It's one of 6 upstream water reclamation plant. And when I say upstream, it means it's upstream of the joint water pollution control plant. And I'll show you a schematic of that again. And this is a quick kind of synopsis of what Maria showed. You saw some of this in the earlier tour. Here's your influent pump building, then what occurs in the primary tank where the stuff is settled out. The sludge, the heavy stuff is settled out of the raw sewage. And then the stuff then goes into these secondary tanks. They're teeming with microorganisms and they're eating that material. They're settling out. Here's a rendering, and Maria showed you a little bit of that, how these microorganisms are recycled and reused to keep cleaning that water. And we have a laboratory she discussed and always analyzing the water coming in, going out, how the microorganisms are doing. This is where we're settling them out. Here are the filters. That water then goes through filters. Maria referred to them as large Brita filters. They filter that water and then we disinfect it with chlorine and we produce from raw sewage tertiary recycled water, which essentially meets drinking water standards. We do it in about 10 to 12 hours. What nature would need weeks, months, or even years to do, we do in 10 to 12 hours. And she talked about how since 1962, these 6 upstream water reclamation plant has recycled over 1 trillion gallons of water. And the biggest reuse option has been groundwater recharge, where we put it on the ground, percolate it through the ground, and people have been pulling it out since 1962 and reusing it. And she talked a little bit about the joint outfall, the joint water pollution control plant in Carson, but I want to focus on it a little bit. It's the foundation of the joint outfall system. Whether you live in Claremont or Arcadia, some or all of your sewage winds up here. This plant is our first plant. It was built in 1928. It's our largest plant. And it's the foundation of everything we do in the joint outfall system. It produces secondary treated effluent, not tertiary, because this water is too salty for reuse. It's clean, but it's still too salty for reuse. So we discharge this water out to the ocean. And why is it the foundation? I think this map kind of says it all. So whether you live in Claremont or Altadena, every day, some or all of your wastewater winds up in Carson if you're in the joint outfall system. And it could be some, because as Maria pointed out, solids are removed from wastewater. If you live in Pomona area, it goes to the Pomona Water Reclamation Plant, your wastewater. The solids are removed there, put back into the sewers, and flows all the way to Carson, where all the solids in the joint outfall system are removed and processed at one location, as Maria showed you, and we generate power off that. We don't need to do 7 different locations in terms of solids processing, and it's a huge cost saving. And as, in addition, it generates biogas or energy for us to keep our costs down and your rates down. Here's a shot. The top image is an image at the Joint Water Pollution Control in Carson. This is a truck being loaded with the biosolids material that's been left over after processing. And the lower shot shows you the biosolids after it's been composted with agricultural waste, and we've turned it into a soil amendment. So I've kind of shown you what we do, how we protect public health and the environment. And now I want to talk about what our focus, our operational focus will be over the next couple of years. There are 4 main areas, and that's really what's driving our budgets and our rates. One is sewer repair and rehabilitation. We have some sewers that are as much as 100 years old. And so we're continually inspecting them, and we see issues that we have to repair and address. We're building a new tunnel we call the Clearwater Tunnel from the joint plant in Carson. I'll tell you more about that. We're trying to increase our recycled water production. We're in a semi-arid area. We're in the last 3 years, it's been 3 of the driest years on record, and we want to help play a part in that. And then we're looking at treatment plant upgrades. The nature of the wastewater coming into our treatment plant has changed because we've done good things, but there's some unintended consequences, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So these are the four key areas that we're looking at operationally, make sure we continue to reliably provide this service. Rehabilitating the existing sewers to extend their useful life. These are different shots in our part of the 1,200 miles of trunk sewer we have. In the upper left, you see what we call crown rot. And the airspace on top of these sewers, hydrogen sulfide will build up, that acid will eat away at the concrete. And so we are always putting cameras down the sewers and making sure that they're in good shape. And if they're not in good shape, we have to repair or replace them. And if we see that there's some crown rot, but it hadn't gotten to the point of no return, we'll spray the top of those sewers with a compound. It's a milk of magnesia type compound, kind of like what you do when you have an acidy stomach. Well, that compound reduces or retards the buildup of hydrogen sulfide and extends the life of the sewer. If we can't do that, then we'll go in and line it, because it's a lot less disruptive than tearing open the street. And in worst case scenario, we'll come in and build a new sewer. So we have 1,200 miles of sewers that we're inspecting every week. And we have to do repairs because you have a system that's basically been around for almost 100 years. We're building a Clearwater tunnel. Here's another shot of the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant in Carson that you see here. Most people don't realize that every drop of that water that's produced by that plant goes through two tunnels that you see here. One was built in 37, one was built in 58. It goes out through those two tunnels and then it's discharged in the ocean because this water is too salty for reuse without advanced treatment. Well, these tunnels always have flow in them, so we can't take them out of service. They're not built to current seismic code, and we're concerned about the capacity of these tunnels. Most recently in 2017, in January of 2017, when we had those heavy rain events, we came within inches of flooding out the joint plant because we didn't have enough capacity to move all that water through those two tunnels. As Maria so eloquently described, when it rains really heavy, I mean, what happens is that some of these manholes, water will come in, or streets are really flooded. Some of your neighbors or some will lift the manhole covers to get that water off the street, and it winds up in our sewer. And it can, and in 2017, and with some of these heavy rain events we're seeing, we're seriously concerned about having enough capacity to make sure this plant always stays online to provide reliable wastewater treatment. So how are we building this new tunnel? We're utilizing a tunnel boring machine. Here she is. Her name is Rachel. This is her last year before she was lowered underground. She was lowered underground and began tunneling last fall. And she's already built about 2,000 feet of 18-foot diameter tunnel. This tunnel will be about 7 miles long. It'll give us redundancy and make sure the joint plant in Carson is always online, whether it be raining or shining, always online. So the Clearwater tunnel is being built now. It'll probably take Rachel about 3.5, 4 years to get all the way from Carson down to San Pedro and tie into the existing ocean outfalls that we have there. The joint plant, still at JWPCP. I talked about how this water has been too salty for reuse. Well, we're in unprecedented drought. If you pick up the newspaper, you read it online, you watch TV, it's become a national news story. At least 50% of our water is imported, and those imported water supplies are being cut back by, we get this water either from Northern California, Sacramento Bay Delta, or Colorado River. The state told Southern California that we're only going to get 50% of its yearly allocation because things are so dire in terms of Northern California and the snowpack. So in 2019, this sanitation districts and the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California started up a demonstration facility. Here you see on the right, it's located at the joint plant or JWPCP in Carson. Since 2019, we've been taking the clean water produced by the joint plant in Carson and looking at ways to cost effectively purify this. This is the first step in a project we call the Regional Recycled Water Program. It's now, that Regional Recycled Water Program is now in the environmental facility planning phase. And if all goes well, we get all the approval, it could lead to 150 million gallons per day purification facility that would put that water back into our water supply, our potable water supply, and makes our area more sustainable, whether there's droughts in Northern California on the Colorado River or not. This would be enough water for about 1.5 million people. So that's something we're embarking on. Other thing, operational focus is upgrading our treatment plants. We've all done a wonderful job of conserving water inside our homes. We've gone to low flow toilets, gone to washers and dishwashers that use less water. So what we're seeing is we're seeing less flow coming to our treatment plant, but the solid material in our wastewater is still the same, or in some cases greater. So you have a more concentrated wastewater coming to our treatment plant, coming through our sewers and to our treatment plant. So it's creating unique situations that we have to address, and we're analyzing that and looking at upgrades to these treatment plants as we have this more concentrated wastewater coming into our plants. I talked about the operational focus to make sure we still provide this level of service that most people take for granted and they don't think about. But there are also financial responsibilities. In addition to operational stuff, making sure we financial responsibility, make sure we have enough money to pay our bills, keep the power on, make sure the chemicals can be purchased. We want to provide financial stability. And that means that regardless of what occurs, we don't want any sudden increase in our rates or anything like that. So we want to maintain financial stability for you, our ratepayers. We want to maximize our credit ratings so we can take advantage of low interest loans, low interest bonds. And we want to make sure we always provide the best rates, most cost-effective rates in the country. So how do we do that? We're always actively looking for ways to reduce our expenses and to generate revenues. We're always looking at staff optimization. We're looking at energy production. We're looking at energy efficiency programs, bulk purchase of chemicals, lowest cost financing, and the sale of recycled water, to name a few. In terms of staffing, over the last 9 years, we've reduced staff by about 12% while still providing service that protects public health and the environment. In terms of energy production, we're really proud of this because we're one of the leaders in this. We're one of the biggest producers of green energy. And I'll use the joint plant as the focus of this. In the upper left, you see a shot of the joint plant. The joint plant has, as Maria showed you, a facility called the Total Energy Facility that's been online since the 80s. It can produce up to 20 megawatts of power. And it does it from the biogas, from the solids process there. That biogas, most of that gets wheeled around and it powers the joint plant to the tune of about 18 megawatts. And it makes the joint plant essentially energy self-sufficient, saving us and our ratepayers at least $9 million per year in terms of energy costs. Our energy efficiency program. Our energy efficiency program, it saves us about $7 million per year annually. That's in terms of, we purchase power from non-traditional sources, do rate optimization. We're always looking to replace older equipment with energy efficient equipment. And then every project we do a life cycle cost analysis to make sure we minimize energy usage. We have a whole department devoted to energy efficiency. Purchasing power for large agency. Overall, the 24 sanitation district is treating wastewater for 5.5 million people. So that's a lot of chemicals. So when you have that kind of buying power, you can get some big bulk discounts. So we get discounts on chemicals, for example, from 10 to 50%. We also create a competitive marketplace with the different vendors. And then we're also actively seeking low-cost financing for capital projects. Instead of having one big expense on the books for us and our ratepayers, we look for this low-cost financing option to spread out the costs over years. In terms of grants, since 2001, we've received over $35 million. We're currently pursuing about $3 million in grants now. In terms of low-interest loans, since 2001, we've gotten $335 million worth of those loans. And now we're pursuing 3 loans in the joint outfall system, 2 from the state at about 1.6%, and then 1 from the federal government at about 2.7%. And those loans will result in additional savings of $228 million. And then anytime the bond market is right, we're looking to refinance bond. And we've done that to the tune of saving about $35 million. And then the sale of recycled water. Anytime you can generate revenue, convert waste into resource, it's the right thing to do. It's also the fiscally right thing to do. By generating more recycled water, you're helping sustain semi-arid Southern California. We're also generating revenues that help to lower the cost for us and our ratepayer. I've gone through a lot of factors, and how did all these factors get incorporated into the budget? Let's take a deeper look. Looking at the joint outfall system, or JOS, projected expenses, and let's use fiscal year 2022, 2023 as an example. Our operation and maintenance costs, that's for the sewers, the treatment plant, all that, $347 million. To build capital infrastructure, such as the tunnel from the joint plant, for example, or a new sewer line, you're looking at $414 million. And then to pay off debt, $10 million, and then dollars to reserves, not much, but you're looking at about $771 million in expenses. And those have to be balanced by funding sources, revenue sources. And starting from the bottom up, we're going to pull $123 million from our reserves. Whenever we know that because you can see these infrastructure kind of getting to the end of their useful life, whenever we realize we need big capital expenditures, we build up our reserve. So there isn't a shock on the system, a shock to our ratepayers to have a sudden increase. So we built up our reserves so we can pull from our reserves to help pay for these large capital projects. Also money from loans and bonds at tune about $179 million, as you can see here with the cursor. And then money from contracts and interest. And then ad valorem tax. Most people don't realize that when you pay your property tax, we get a portion of that. And in the joint outfall system for the fiscal year 2022, 2023, that is about $81 million a year. So that goes towards our expenses. And then whatever is left over, whatever we don't have covered, that comes from user charges. So we're looking at user charges of about $373 million. And that's why you got the notice, the Proposition 218 notice. It's about the proposed changes in our user charges are what we call service fees. So we need to collect $373 million in terms of user charges. So how do we collect the service charge or user charge or service fee? They're allocated to individual users based on sewage unit. And that means you pay based on what you use. So if you're in septic system, you pay nothing. But if you're in a single family home, that's considered one sewage unit. And a sewage unit is how much a typical single family home would generate, and the strength of that wastewater in terms of chemical, oxygen demand, suspended solid. And let's say you had a car wash and it generated 3 times the amount of sewage a single family home would pay. You would pay 3 times 3 sewage units, since a single family home is the basis of this measurement. But when it all gets put together, every home, no matter where you live in the joint outfall system, you pay exactly the same amount. You pay roughly $220 a year for sewage conveyance from your home to the local line to the trunk sewer and then to the treatment plant and cleaning, all that, $220 a year. But the difference is what bucket of money do we get these expenses from or revenues from? So if you're in, for example, district number 1, most of that 220 would come from the service charge or user fees. And then you get a small portion from, ad valorem tax that you see here in the light blue. And also for District 1, because their reserves are a little low, we're collecting additional money to build up their reserves. But the bottom line is that $220, no matter what district you're in. District 28, for example, most of that $220 comes from ad valorem tax. They have such high ad valorem or property taxes in that district that a lot of that $220 is paid by those ad valorem or AV taxes. And then what's left up, what's not covered by that, they have sufficient reserves. We can pull money out of that to make up the rest for the 220. But the takeaway from this slide is regardless of where you live, you're paying the same for sewage, essentially the same for sewage treatment, no matter, for a single family home. And then how does that translate in terms of service charge? That's the user charge. So overall, the average increase for the joint outfall system is about 2.2%. But in some districts, it may be as high as 4.8%. And in other districts, you may see a reduction because your ad valorem tax and your reserves are so high. But overall, 2.2% increase in terms of user charge, user fees, or service charge rates. Because when you're dealing with wastewater from homes and businesses, it's impractical to meter. We estimate charges. People say, why is it impractical? Because the meters and the pipes are so small that they would get clogged all the time. And just the cost of repair and maintenance would far dwarf what the user fees or service charges are. So we estimate the charges based on the category or type of use, whether it be a single family home, car wash, movie theater, and then the number of units or size of units. And because we're estimating it, we give people an opportunity to adjust, get a lower user charge or service fee, service charge, if they can prove that they are using less water than average. Because the less potable water you use, the less wastewater you're going to generate. So we have a low water rebate program where you can save money. It's a simple application process. You provide your water bills. Our folks will analyze it. If you meet certain threshold, you'll get a reduction and you'll lock that in for multiple years. So now what is the bottom line of all this information? I know this is what you're here to hear about. If you live in the joint outfall system, your total costs are lower than other comparable agencies. If you live in the joint outfall system, you pay about $23 a month for wastewater conveyance. That includes your local sewer line by your city or the county. That's our trunk sewer, that's our treatment, all that. And that includes, and that's covered by, that's paid by your service charge and ad valorem taxes and so on. You're paying $23 roughly a month. If you live in Dallas, for example, you're paying $33 a month for the same service. If you live in San Diego, you're paying $47, $48 a month for the exact same service. And that's how we always look to see, how are we doing? We're doing our level best, but you need some kind of scoreboard, some kind of metric. And these are all comparable agencies. And you can see that we're doing quite well. So you're here in the fifth of five, you probably received in the mail a Proposition 218 flyer and notice of the public hearing. So you're here for the fifth of five information meetings we've held. Some of you attended our virtual tour earlier. We're at the fifth of the five information meetings. This will be the last info meetings, but if you or your neighbors missed an info meeting, we've recorded one of them and we have it on your website if you want to spread the word about what we do and the proposed rate increase. And these info meetings are run up to public hearings where our board of directors will consider public comments and the proposed rate changes. The first public hearing will be this Wednesday, May 11th at 1:30, and you can see the Zoom ID, and that's for what we call the Southern District. So if you live in any one of those sanitation districts, that would be your public hearing to either make a comment or have your comments in before that hearing meeting. If you live in the South Bay districts, that District 5 or South Bay cities, that hearing will be May 18th at 1:30, same Zoom ID. And if you live in what we call the Northern District, like Pasadena, La Puente, Bradbury, that public hearing will be on Wednesday, May 25th at 1:30, same Zoom ID. And at that meeting, you can tune in or send in your comments before that. we'll be here to answer your questions. But if we don't answer them now, you need additional resources. Here's some phone numbers, phone number, email address, mailing address, and website where you can get additional information or send us comments to these things. And Genesis will put some of this information in the chat. But at this point, I'll take questions. I'm here with Felicia Petrie, who's the division engineer in our financial management department. So Felicia and I, in addition to Genesis, will take any questions you have, and hopefully you have a lot of questions. Any questions, Genesis?
Awesome. So while we wait for the questions, I will start putting some of the details in the chat where we put our email there. And then I'm going to put our website where you can find more information. And so does anyone have any questions? Thomas, Bonnie, Stephanie? Let's see, we had some questions from them at the tour.
They can either raise their hand and you can unmute them, or they could just put it in where the Q&A, I think.
Yeah, Q&A. At this point, they can do chat too. That's fine. Let's see. I'm going to put the website that has a lot of this information. It's lacsd.org/rates. If you actually click on the link that I just put up there, it'll take you to that page directly. And then the only other one is the phone number, which I will put on here as well. Do not find it. So let's see here. All right. It looks like no one has any questions.
Oh, thank you. Someone had a question.
Wait. We got a question.
Thank you.
Did the sanitation districts look into potential funding assistance from the recent infrastructure bill?
I would punt that one to Felicia. We're always looking at funding assistance. We're always looking, and Felicia, do you want to expand on that?
Yes, as we mentioned before in Basil's presentation, we have several loans, which is something we do seek as part of funding for different things, as well as grants. You're probably thinking about maybe the 2020 infrastructure bill that Congress passed. So yes, as that money trickles down to states, they will start to allocate that. So we're always looking for projects that are appropriate for us to seek those types of funding.
Okay, cool. And then, so we have another question from Stephanie Wright. She says, I live in a condominium. I do not receive a water bill. Can I file an application for a rebate?
So your water bill is paid through your association, maybe. I would have you call that number. The number that is put in the chat leads to our customer service representatives. They can help you with the low water rebate application, anything basically that has to do with your bill. So that's a great question, and I would have you give them a call and you can discuss that with them.
Okay, awesome. Those are some great questions. If you have any more, please put it in the Q&A. And again, if you think of one later, please feel free. You can email us, you can give us a call, you can send us a letter, whatever is most convenient. You can reach us there. And if you just want to look up at more information that we have, or you want to see all this information in writing, please visit our website at lacsd.org/rates. One more question. This question's from Alec. I live in West Athens. You mentioned more potential flooding. Are there any plans to capture that water for drinking water supplies?
I'm not sure where West Athens is, but sanitation districts, we're working with some of the cities in LA County to capture some of the stormwater. We have a project near the joint plant where we capture some of that stormwater and put it through the treatment plant and that water down the road could add to our drinking water supply. And we're always looking at projects where we utilize the sewer and maybe divert some of the first flush into our treatment plant to not only clean up that water, but also adds to the amount of water available to dispense as recycled water.
Cool. And West Athens, if I'm not mistaken, is by the 110 and the 105. It's
Oh,
really
okay.
close to Hawthorne. It's in between Hawthorne and Willowbrook
Okay.
neighborhood. But awesome though. Thank you for your questions. And again, if you have any others, please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is down in the chat. And we hope to see you at the next one. If you're interested in seeing other tours of our other water reclamation plants, let me just put it quickly in the chat. You can visit our website at lacsd.org/tours, and you can see the calendar for the full year. We have other wastewater treatment plants and some of our solid waste facilities that we give tours of as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And Basil, did you want to close it off?
I just want to say thank you for joining us at this information meeting. I know it's not as sexy as having a virtual tour, but showing up is very important so you understand where the rates are coming from. And then the last thing I would say is that those public hearings to consider those rates begin next week. And if you're interested, get your comments in. The first one, depending on what sanitation districts you're in, begins May 11th at 1:30 and via Zoom. Okay. And
All right.
thank you, really thank you for showing up and listening to me, and Felicia and Genesis and Maria. And have a great
Thank you guys.
weekend.
Have a good one. Have a good weekend.
All right,
Bye.
bye.